Hey, everybody. I'm so happy that you're here today to have this conversation. I wanted to start by introducing everybody, and I'll start by introducing myself. My name is Matthew López. My pronouns are he, him. I am originally from Panama City, Florida, but I live now in upstate New York in the Catskills. Let's go over to Sandra.
Hi, my name is Sandra Caldwell. My pronouns are she, her, cupcake, whatever. I was born in Washington, D.C., and I too live upstate in Rhinebeck, New York, and loving every moment of it for right now. And I miss the city. I miss it, but I'm happy to be home. This is my home, so I'm happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Brian Lowdermilk. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them. I'm coming to you from West Philadelphia, which is originally Lenape land. And I'm just so happy to be surrounded by such beautiful cupcakes all.
Hi, I'm Tom Viola. My pronouns are he, him. I'm from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm right now in upstate New York, working here remotely since June 14th. Although prior to that, I live in New York City for over 40 years.
Wow. Thank you all. Again, thank you all for being here. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you. There are a lot of different ways one can talk about this election, and one can talk about the Biden-Harris campaign. But I'm really excited to have an opportunity to speak to you as members of the LGBTQ community, as well as theater artists, and I think that intersection is always been a very vital and important part of the way we talk about politics and the way we engage in politics as theater makers. I just sort of want to bring us up to speed before we have this conversation of where we are today as we record this, which is a week after the death of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. As we speak today, the very likely nomination of Amy Coney Barrett to replace her on the Supreme Court, who is an avowed social conservative with a long record of hostility to our community and to LGBTQ rights. Trump administration, and Trump in particular, has cynically appropriated our community, literally in one case wrapping himself in a rainbow flag. But in fact, this administration has been particularly hostile to our community and to the trans community in particular. And we find ourselves several weeks away from an election that will determine not just the next 4 years, but perhaps, and it's not too strong a statement to make, the future of the Republic. I wanted to ask each of you, and feel free to jump in, whoever wants to start. How have the last 4 years felt for you? How have you felt personally to be LGBTQ in these last 4 years under the Trump administration? Why don't we start with you, Sandra?
It's been, for me, it's been a little off and odd for me, because this past 4 years started for me doing something extraordinary in my life, which was coming out, if you will. And I was in the midst of discovering this new world I had seemed to put myself in. And at the same time, I want to say this crazy person. I don't know if that's right or not.
That's polite.
That's this crazy person showed up. He was there for 6 months or so, and then he just got rough, and it made me confused about what I was dealing with in my own personal life, because I was so bothered by what he was saying that I felt like I lost a bit of me because of him, his cronies, everything that was going on. It just looked crazy. Everybody was jumping in, jumping out, and I understood. I was very clear, and I saw exactly what was happening, and I saw why. I think he's very clever, But I think the people around him used him to create exactly what's happening right now. So they started it at the beginning of the 4 years. They knew exactly what they were starting. And here we are with those 4 years that they created this. And I totally believe they created this monster. Deliberately caused this.
Tom, in your work in your career has been both within the theater industry and within advocating for the rights of the people with HIV.
Folks living with HIV/AIDS as well as the LGBT.
Very vulnerable. You have spent your career advocating for the rights of some of the most vulnerable in our communities. And how has the last 4 years changed your work and changed the way your organization operates, and also in your own personal life as a member of our community?
Yeah. Well, I think Trump told us, first of all, exactly who he is in terms of the LGBT community the day after the inauguration. And frankly, it horrified me. And I really felt it set the stage for what has been the I just have to say it, the shit show of this administration, which was literally the day after they wiped clean the LGBTQ website on the White House website. I mean, I remember that I don't know if that was something that came up on the news or something that was noticed just online and people talked about on social media, but it truly gave me a chill because I thought, there it is. If anybody had any doubt, if anybody who voted for a third party, if anybody who sat out the election because they didn't like Hillary, damn you for that, because we knew that this was the guy that we were going to get. And while this isn't an LGBTQ issue, I also thought soon after that the same thing, that this was a man who was going to lie to us for 4 years when we saw that pathetic show of him lying about how many people attended his inauguration. It was like in two actions. He cued us in to who he would be for the next 4 years. Now, it's much, much worse than that, but that was sort of a preview. And it did not go unnoticed. I think by many of us, certainly by me. Over these 4 years, I have to say, though, while I find myself, I think it's added to my resolve. I mean, I have to say, I just cannot be in a constant state of upset and anger. So where I've tried to channel that is in reaching out, both to the folks right next to me, truly, in terms of embrace, and also politically in just being resolved to stand up against him. Even having this conversation, I consider that to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Brian?
Yeah, for me, Matthew, these past 4 years, hearing you talk, I was thinking about how on election night in 2016, I came home from the Javits Center, and as a Jew, like I was thinking, and in conversations, like there's just always this thought of, am I going to have to leave this country? Like, is this no longer going to be a country for me? It's just this little thing that pops up. And so I came home and I turned to my partner and I said, here's why I think we're going to be okay, and why, like, in our state, living here in New York, and why we're going to be okay. And my partner said, how dare you say that? How dare you think of yourself? We have to think about our communities. We have to think about our friends who are Middle Eastern. We have to think about our friends who have less privilege than we do, and our friends for whom this might actually be the end of the world for them in terms of where this goes. And I was unprepared over the past 4 years to move backwards. Like, if you think about the Trump rule on adoption, on being able to discriminate in adoption policies for LGBTQ individuals, it had never occurred to me that we could start going backwards. And maybe that is also, because of being someone who lived through, gay rights, like coming into the forefront and seeing these like beautiful like steps forward we made. It never occurred to me that we could so quickly start going backwards, and how fragile some of the work that had been done in effect actually was.
I think that's a really great pivot, Brian, to my next question, which is, so now we've spoken about the last 4 years of the Trump administration, and now we have our candidate for president on the Democratic side is Joe Biden. And let's be frank, Joe Biden is a 77-year-old straight cisgendered white man from a very different era than whom we naturally expect to find an ally in our community. And yet, to his credit, I think it's very fair to say that he has evolved over the course of his career. And most notably, he was
absolutely
he was the first elected member of the executive branch to publicly endorse marriage equality before even Obama had come out in support of it. Joe Biden is someone who gets it, even if he does need and want to be educated. One of the things that I think is the mark of a great leader is the willingness to be taught. And I do feel that I've watched him over the past several months, especially evolve even further, particularly when it comes to racial justice. He's someone I feel is a partner and is a willing partner in fighting for what we need. And it sort of made me think about, who we are as a community as it comes to who we are as voters. And it also, I think about the way our community has evolved over the last several years. I think about marriage equality, which is an absolutely good thing. I'm married. I love it. I'm in favor of it most days. But it was also a fight that was largely for the benefit of the most privileged among us. And increasingly, we have, as a community, have over the last 8 years, over the last 12 years, begun to turn our focus toward protecting the more vulnerable among us. And that all underscores to me the idea that we are not single issue voters. We're healthcare voters, we're racial justice voters, we are voters who are concerned with lifting up the working poor. And so as you sit here and you think of yourself as a voter in this conversation, as a member of the LGBTQ community who is also an American citizen, what do you think are the needs of our community as it applies to the needs of the nation as a whole? Where do you see the need for an intersectional approach to policy, and where do you hope that the potential Biden administration can take us in that direction?
Can I just jump in here first for a second? Because I think even before I get into the LGBTQ issues, I have to say what Joe Biden, I think, promises most for us is just some basic decency. That we can have a man in that office who understands what it is to both to talk and to listen, as you said, Matthew. I have to say Joe was not my choice necessarily in the primary. I came to Joe, and I certainly want to and have very much united behind Joe. But what I very much admire about him since the convention, the virtual convention, is how he invited an African-American woman who absolutely stood against him in the primary and said some pretty rough things to join him in partnership. Because I think Joe's great strength is his ability to work beyond himself and with others. I think he did that with President Obama as a partnership. And I very much look forward to this partnership, president and vice president, that he will now have with Kamala Harris, excuse me. So that said, I think that sense of decency, we all have our moments and foibles, and I'm sure that there are moments where he perhaps, wished he'd said something or behaved differently or even voted differently. But I do think this is a man that is not going to the first thing, the first day of his presidency after his inauguration, began to wipe people clean off of his slate. I think he's going to bring us in. And I find that to be very hopeful. And if anything else, a little bit of hope right now will take this nation out of a terrible rut.
And let's just know one thing. Joe Biden has had 8 years of training.
Yes.
Of civility training, of gracious training, of of connecting people. You know, he's had 8 years of training. I see his age as a plus. I see his time in the White House a plus. And I'm with you. I didn't know that much about him in the sense his policy, because he was so not in the shadow, but he was in such a support system for Obama that I think he was in the office. He was in the room when it happens. He helped, but that's all he was doing. He was very gracious. So you have to give him and understand the fact that he's been trained. He's ready. He's seen the trans women working in the White House. He's seen it. He knows he knows the pronouns. I guarantee you he knows the pronouns. And I guarantee he'll use the pronouns. And Kamala Harris, she's there. She's the black woman that's going to go, she's going to go there.
She's going to add a fire to this administration.
Yes, that neck will move.
Yeah.
Do you hear what I'm saying? It's going to be that. And she's going to be able to add that toughness to his charmness, and I can't wait to see that yin and yang happen. I can't wait to see it. I'm looking forward to see how she's going to handle this. And I think she's going to handle it beautifully.
Brian?
Biden is inevitably himself. He may be the last fully, completely honest human in federal government. But I mean, in terms of the way that he came out in favor of gay marriage, just blundering his way through, unable to help himself, like he is transparently, authentically that guy. He's Joe. And how exciting that Kamala Harris is there to add that fire, to push him, and how refreshing after 4 years of just relentless falsehoods to have someone who is willing to listen when he's wrong, willing to surround himself with smart people, and who is actually truthful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very encouraged by what I've heard about his transition team. I'm glad that they are working as hard as they seem to be, as I've read and I hear that they are, to literally be able to start that first day. Because a lot of what Biden will be able to do in this presidency, particularly in the first months of this presidency, is to turn around some of those heinous executive orders that Trump just ripped off one after another. I think barely knowing what he was signing half the time it was put in front of him, and he was pleased just to see that ridiculous signature of his in a black flare pen. I truly think that I'm hoping that literally that Joe's first day in office, there's going to be a stack about that big that he's going to go through and hopefully explain to us what he's doing, why he's doing it, and why it's important that these LGBTQ issues, the environmental issues, the racial, all sorts of things be put back into place.
Mm-hmm. I mean, one of the things that has always struck me about Joe Biden is he is sort of jumping off what Brian had said. He is also one of the most compassionate human beings to serve in government I have ever witnessed. You watched that video and during the convention of him with the kid who stuttered, and it just breaks your heart to see, and it is so refreshing. And it's also sad that we think about the fact that it is refreshing to see a politician who has compassion for other people. I mean, it has only been 4 years since Obama has been president, and it felt like a breath of fresh air to see a person running for president who actually has the ability to look another person in the eye and understand who they are. And you watch videos and you hear stories over and over about his ability to connect to people. I think, looking back at the history of our community as American citizens, as fighting for the rights of America, fighting for our rights as American citizens, one of the deficits we were always fighting against is a deficit of compassion for our fellow citizens. And we are now finding ourselves in a place of a great compassion deficit, and not only a deficit of compassion, but a president who is willfully widening that chasm between us and our fellow citizens. And it is not too small a thing to say that Joe Biden, as you said, Sandra, there's sort of he will bring dignity back to the White House, but he will also bring compassion for people who are not as privileged as he has been. And I think that, look, he's a kid from Scranton. He gets it. But he's also, a white straight man from Scranton. And the fact that he can seemingly look us in the eyes and see who we are and understand our needs and our pain it gives me hope. And speaking of hope, I want to read to you all a few of the items that are on the Biden-Harris LGBTQ policy platform. You can go to joebiden.com and read it for yourself. But I want to, because I think and then I want to go to a question for you, Brian, because you and I had a conversation before this that I think touches on this, which is, so listen, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they want to empower federal agencies to be champions for equality. They want to reaffirm that the Civil Rights Act prohibits discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. Now, we should talk about the Supreme Court ruling. We go back to this conversation about the Supreme Court that we've been having for the past week. Now, this administration, when you look at the DACA ruling that the Supreme Court handed down last year, the administration has been absolutely in violation of a Supreme Court ruling on DACA. And so I have no belief that 4 more years of a Trump administration will actually provide and protect for the protections that the Supreme Court has recently just said that people in our community and transgender people in particular in this nation have the rights to. I don't for a minute believe that they will follow the dictates of the Supreme Court on that. Do you, Tom?
Matthew, no, I don't. Matthew, I just looked this up. There are 794 federal judges. Trump has appointed in 4 years, with the help of that horror, Mitch McConnell, 194 of them. Already that is a horror show, and speaks again to the terrible transgressions of the 2016 election and how we could not come together for Hillary. But the idea of another 4 years where he could appoint literally over half of this country's federal judges, you will literally see justice and equality trampled into the mud.
Now, listen, I want to continue this. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to reverse the transgender military ban. They want to stop employment discrimination in the federal government. They want to reverse Department of Defense policies that perpetuate stigmatization and discrimination against people living with HIV. They want to restore transgender students access to sports, bathrooms, and locker rooms in accordance with their gender identity by reinstating the Obama-Biden guidance revoked by the Trump-Pence administration. They want a ban on so-called conversion therapy. They want to ensure blood donation procedures are based on science and not on stigma. They want to reverse the Trump-Pence administration rule allowing adoption agencies to discriminate against LGBTQ families. They want to nominate pro-equality federal officials and judges who will protect the LGBTQ rights, ensure transgender and gender nonconforming identification documents, count LGBTQ people in federal data collection, including the census and the American Community Survey. They want to end the misuse of broad exemptions to discriminate, make prosecuting violence against transgender women of color a priority, and you know that Kamala Harris will be all over that. Work to end suicides among LGBTQIA plus people, and expand the Matthew Shepard and James Byrd Jr. Hate Crimes Prevention Act. Those things that I just rattled off to you are things that are possible. They're not just sort of—
That's wild. That's everything you could ever want.
If you looked at that thing that I just read to you, it isn't something that the LGBTQ community is saying needs to happen, although of course we are. It is coming from the Democratic candidate for president and his running mate. These are the things we will do. And so, Brian, you and I had a conversation about this. It's not the sexiest conversation we've ever had.
No, but that's a sexy list.
That is a very sexy list.
Sexy list. Thank you, BidenHarris.com.
So listen, talk to me about I want the rest of the panelists to hear what you and I had this conversation about. I mean,
Oh, we were talking about the absolutely sexy of all the things. We were talking about federal agencies.
But the point that you made in our conversation, which I think is really interesting, and I would love for you to talk about, is this idea that these policies can only be enacted with a Congress that is willing to enact them, and restoring a federal bureaucracy that has been hollowed out by the Trump administration. And so I would love for you to continue that it's not sexy, but it's also vitally important. It's something we should understand in this community.
Yeah, well, it's something after 2016 that I think for a lot of us, we all started looking to the actual federal agencies that do the day-to-day work of government to know how bad it was going to be. And I feel like it is through the grace and the stewardship of so many of them that stayed in their positions and that like managed to stick it out during those early days. Like you heard so many stories about the folks hanging in there in major federal agencies in order to hold on and get things through. But they always said from the beginning, like, that's achievable potentially for one term. That is not achievable for 2 terms. By the time you're out of 2 terms, there's absolutely no through line of humans from the beginning who remember how government is supposed to work. But the thing I was thinking about, Matthew, that made me emotional was the idea that, like, to look at the words like empower federal agencies to be champions for equality. Like there is so much, it turns out, that that the federal government does to indicate to all of the extraordinary number of employees in federal government about how to act, about how to do their jobs, and about how to lead their organizations. And the idea of having someone again at the top who does share our community's values and that does care about what we care about, like it's extraordinary to think about all of the individuals working at those agencies that would be able to do their jobs again. Like it just feels like this like beautiful image of like in Beauty and the Beast where the like I'm so gay. This the like castle comes back to life. Like that's my dream at the end of it's been 4 years. And, like all of the dormant secret liberals who've been like hanging out for 4 years, like waiting, like can finally like do their jobs again, and we can finally have a functioning society again. But it feels like if we wait 8 years, the petals will evolve.
Okay. Oh God. Well, here's the thing that Biden brings to that a Biden administration brings to everything that Brian just said, and I never quite realized this until witnessing and living through these last 4 years, where you saw Trump cynically again and again and again put people in charge of an entire federal agency that when you looked at their background, you knew that they were there basically to tear it down, to have the government upend against itself. And no matter how those folks in the second tier and third tiers were working, at best, they were going to be diving for cover. So the fact that Joe can turn around and literally put people in charge of these federal agencies who want them to work, who want them to expand, who want them to be vital and respond to the needs of citizenry, as opposed to literally tearing them down for some kind of corporate image or enrichment. Yeah,
I just want the good old boys club to stop with Trump. I mean, it's so obvious. He puts a crony in charge. The postal thing just drives me crazy. That drives me insane because you just dropped him in there. You know, was he elected? Where did he come from? And there's several people on his team that I don't even know who they are. I can't speak to it because I don't know who they are. I don't know their backgrounds. I don't know their history. They're just there. And then 2 months later, they're gone and someone else is in that position. I want to just see the next administration, like you said, put this box back together again. Do you know what I mean? Show me introduce me to somebody who knows how to do the job. At this point, I don't know anybody in this administration that knows how to do the job, and
or that isn't cued in only to destruction.
Now, see, wasn't that a sexy answer? Sandra, I wanted to ask you in particular a question. So one of the things that has given me a lot of hope this year, as a matter of fact, one of the things that's given me the most hope this year has been the intersection between the Black Lives Matter movement and the queer community, in particular the expansion of Black Lives Matter to specifically include the lives of Black trans women. And I don't think it's an accident that the three founders of Black Lives Matter are all women and that two of them are queer women. And so do you feel a difference in how not only the queer community is, but also a growing portion of the American people in general are taking to the streets and speaking out for the lives and the visibility of Black trans women? And what more can be done, and what do you hope a Biden administration can do to amplify this message?
Well, I have a little problem with this question, because Black Lives Matter, the connection between Black trans lives matter, they haven't quite yet met completely in the middle. That's why there's so much violence right now on Black trans women. They're trying to come to the forefront, but even in the Black community, there's some pushback. Do you know what I mean? And I think some kind of way we've got to unite these two people. I wish I had the answer, but I want to see Black trans women and Black trans men march and be accepted in the march. But right now, they're not completely accepted in the Black Lives March. It's not quite there. It's a little separated for me. It still is a little separated, because if you go on Instagram and you see, I've seen more violence against Black trans women than before. It's like they haven't accepted Black trans women into the march. I think we need to all fight in the same direction. I think we'd come out much better. I think that would help increase voting in the Black trans world. Sometimes I think Black trans women don't think they have the right to vote. You know, so folks, we've got to start putting this all back together. And this has gone back for a while ago. I was around when the Stonewall happened. Lord. And the separation between trans and gay, it feels like that now a little bit. It's certainly not as separate as it was, but it feels like that a little bit. I just want to see people connect the dots all the way, but unfortunately, they're not connected 100%. So I can't connect the dots completely with the Black Lives Matter and the trans community, because I see the problems. I see the problems in the Black community. They don't accept, I say half don't accept Black trans women.
What do you hope a Biden and Harris administration may do to answer those concerns? What do you, if you had the opportunity to sit down with the Biden administration, what would you tell them?
I think it's already happened with them too in the White House. You've got Kamala Harris and Biden. I think it's like a love affair, an interracial love affair. I mean, it's going to spill over into the community. It's going to show that this can really happen. This connection between yin and yang can happen. Black and white can happen. Trans and gay can happen. All the pronouns can happen together. This will show that. I think they will come in, be very strong, go right in and lead immediately to make all of this just connect. I've been listening to everybody, and I've been trying to not get personal or all deep into my feelings and things, because sometimes it makes me weep that I fought for a whole lot of my life fighting the government, who wouldn't allow me to have a few things. You know, I couldn't. You would go to jail if you wore women's clothes. So the moment that I get the freedom, this new sense of this new freedom, we have somebody in the White House that now scares me that he's going to take it away, and I feel like I just got it. You know, I'm starting to live free, and then all of a sudden, I don't feel free anymore. I don't feel comfortable.
That's what we're looking for Joe to do, I think, is to restore not only some of the laws and the rights that have been just swiped away, but to begin to take an active leadership role in not only making sure that those are put back in place, but sending a message from the top that is not what that is not how his government is going to move forward. Matthew, can I just say one thing that I think we're forgetting about, though, that I think is the most important thing about the Joe Biden campaign and the Joe Biden presidency, that really is even beyond LGBTQ or any issues, individual issues, and that's the ACA. Right now, healthcare is the most important issue we are all dealing with. And a Republican administration, a Republican Senate literally would like to wipe it away. They would like to turn it into a further corporate profit center, only for those who can afford it. And we have to have Biden in the White House and a Democratic Senate so that ACA can not only be retained and in many ways restored from some of the things Trump wiped away from it, but expanded, because it has to be the wave of the future for all of us. No matter what individual component of an electorate we might be, it is all about the ACA and making sure that can be sustained and nurtured and enhanced. And if you need any reason to vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, beyond any subset, beyond any one executive order, beyond any issue that affects you individually, personally, it is the ACA. Period.
We find ourselves at a place.
Sorry.
No, it's absolutely right. We find ourselves at a place where it seems as though the Trump administration and Donald Trump in particular is terrified of people voting.
Oh,
we find ourselves living in a democracy
you think?
In which the very ideals of democracy and the basic, the simplest and most fundamental tenet of democracy is not just being questioned, it is being made suspect. And
Did you hear what he said the other day? Do away with the ballots.
Do away with the ballots.
Yeah, do away with the ballots. I mean, the man is such a fool. He speaks his id. I mean, that's what he's trying to do, and he then jokes about it. It's like taking the website down the first day. It's like, Don, you're showing us your hand.
And before he said, get rid of the ballot, he said, well, here's the way we can solve this ballot problem. You can go and vote, and just to make sure that your vote is counted, go vote again.
Yes.
What? What is this?
So, look, I think that for those who are watching, if you have the money to give, you should absolutely give as much as you can to candidates that
Sure.
you believe in. That is vitally important, but not everybody has the ability to do that. You write letters, phone bank, where Broadway for Biden, it hosts very fun phone banking. There is ways to do it now from home on using your phone, using the Biden website. But in an election in which the very tenets of democracy are being questioned, the most powerful tool each of us has is our vote. And the only way to ensure that a Biden-Harris victory is recognized as such is to vote in numbers so overwhelming that any attempt to question the legitimacy of the vote is as farcical as we know it already is.
Yeah.
And for those of us, look, Brian, you live in a swing state.
I really do. And I would love to just like take a moment in the off chance that there is anyone watching this who is a white liberal person living in the state of Pennsylvania who considers themselves to be very liberal and is not planning to vote for Biden. Jesus. I just want to talk to you specifically for a moment because I do have people in my community who have told me unapologetically that they are not planning to vote at all this election cycle. These are people who are supporters of Black Lives Matter, people who consider themselves to be leftists, people who consider themselves to be progressives, and they're planning not to vote because Biden wasn't their first choice. And I think that's the very definition of virtue signaling at its absolute worst. I think that there couldn't be a worse way to indicate your values, to indicate your preference for a different candidate than to not get on board with someone who has so much potential to raise up so much within our community. And I think this is a moment to think not just about yourself, but about everyone within your community, and especially for LGBTQIA plus humans. Think about all of those people and follow the Black leaders who are behind Biden and Harris.
Do they not?
The Black leaders who you say you want to follow are behind Biden and Harris. And like, this is a time to listen to your community, and your community is saying, absolutely, this is our salvation.
Do they not think that they will not suffer with the rest of us? I mean, do they think that somehow by sitting out an election or not voting, what does that gain anybody except giving the other side a vote and more credence? It's beyond me that anybody would want to be willing to sit this election out. It is the height of selfishness. It is a sin, truly, with what is at stake for all of us, that someone would sulk through November 3rd is absolutely unforgivable.
Well, I've been phone banking in Philadelphia. If you live in New York, if you live somewhere that's not a swing state, adopt Pennsylvania. There's a 30% down to Pennsylvania, and some of the people here are pretty scary. So please,
Pennsylvania,
phone bank in Pennsylvania, help us.
And folks, remember what happened 4 years ago when everybody thought, well, this is a shoo-in. Well, remember what happened 4 years ago, and this is what you got. Now, we can get out of this. You know what I mean? Don't sit on your hands and not vote because there's no one that you care, you care for. But I hear that all the time. There's nobody I really care for. And I said, but look at what you got. Look at what you got. Look at what you got.
I want to ask you all a question, which I hope you can answer. Right now, what gives you the most hope?
I'll go first. I'm shocked that I know immediately. My first time showing up to a major theater event was in a dress, was at the opening night of The Inheritance on Broadway, which was an evening that gave me a lot of hope for a lot of different reasons. I had been out as trans and gender nonconforming in a lot of my other circles in my life, but I had never actually stepped into professional theater spaces as my full authentic self. And that was an evening that gave me a lot of hope. Sandra, seeing you step into so much power lately, and watching your journey is so inspiring to me. And Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS is it's everything. It's everything, Tom. And so I feel like there's there's so much hope in the work that individuals can do, and so much we can't even see in the moment about what that individual work can do in terms of the farthest stretches of our community. And so that gives me just so much joy and hope. So thank you all for all the work that the three of you do.
Brian, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Tom, Sandra, can you top that?
I'm not sure. I mean, I'm a pragmatic optimist. I think that's an optimist that sort of is always, willing to figure that something could go wrong, but you can do something about it. And I think what gives me hope is that there's a candidate for the highest office in the land who can, or is willing, or even can be taught to see us all. I think the gentleman who's in there, the man who is in there now is the opposite of that. He is so closed down, he is so dark that he attracts the like. And I am hopeful, I am truly hopeful that folks of power, folks of grace, folks of dignity will understand that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they are the team. Joe Biden is the man that can make a difference in having all of us in one way or another seen, reflected, and responded to.
Sandra?
Well, I hope I get to continue what I've learned over the last 4 years. I had just started to live my complete life, my authentic life, not being ashamed or not trying to hide. I worked so much in fear that this freedom that was handed to me 4 years ago, I can't imagine losing it. And this person in the White House makes me afraid that it could go backwards. And I won't have the opportunity to fully live this whole complete life, whatever's left of mine, what's left of my life on this planet. I'm just hopeful that Biden will, I know he'll get in there and he will, I don't know if it'll be immediate, but I will feel much better if there's some hope that's in the White House. I feel much better. Right now I'm scared. I'm back to fear because I don't know. I just don't know what's available to me right now. I don't know.
I'm looking forward to a man who will never feel the need to wrap himself in the rainbow flag, because he'll know that his every action is in fact a reflection of that. Trump mocked us when he did that. Joe Biden is only going to embrace us. And I think he is the road to the future.
Well,
I have one really practical, hopeful thing to add.
There you go.
Pennsylvania, which was we got a really great advancement in terms of how voting is going to work in Philadelphia, which is that you can vote in advance at these satellite locations. So if you're like Pennsylvania, Philadelphia connected, like just check out information on the satellite voting locations. It all happened like last week. It's happening very quickly, but mail-in voting may be less good now than actually going to the physical location, and you can actually just drop it in a drop box. Obviously, I'm very focused on Pennsylvania, but please, please don't make it our fault.
No.
I'll tell
when
you
you go to vote, wear a mask.
I'll tell you what gives me hope is the three of you, and the opportunity to speak to the three of you. Look, I think that it is inescapable that our nation's history has been one of tremendous hope for the few and tremendous fear for the many. And we have seen in this year a reckoning of that. And we have seen this year the economic inequality in this country laid bare, the inequality of access to healthcare laid bare, the inequality of citizens' lives and their protections from COVID. If you are Black and brown in this country, you are more likely to get and die from this disease than anyone else. American history is something that deserves a lot of criticism, a lot of wrongs that need righting. This election, I think, more so than any other that I can remember, is the opportunity, no matter how we feel about our past, to determine what our future is going to be.
Yeah.
And it is so important to me that I do everything that I can to help Joe and Kamala get elected, to widen the margins in the House, to take the Senate away from Mitch McConnell. I think, and I'm so grateful that I've had a chance to talk to you all about this today, I really do think it is not hyperbole to say that the future of our nation depends on this election. And it is up to us. And it is up to everyone watching, and it is up to our friends and our relatives, especially those who live in swing states, especially those who may unbelievably still be on the fence. When the history of this year is written, one of the questions that will be asked of us who live through it is, what did you do in those weeks leading up to the election? And so I'm very grateful that one of my answers is that I got to speak to all three of you. And I'm really grateful to all three of you for being here today. And I look forward to many conversations in the future about how we need to get the Biden administration to do even more. And I cannot wait to be angry at the Biden administration. And
and we will be.
And I can't wait to push them even further. But we can't have those happy conversations until we have this, until we have these tough ones. I'm really grateful to you all for your spirit, for your honesty, and with that, I think we will bring this conversation to a close.
Can I say something?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, you all, because I got to participate with you and learn. I just learned things just now, and I'm thrilled to have been a part of knowledge. You have so much knowledge that I was trying to soak in. I'm like, God, this is like, whew. It's like a handful of just this knowledge. Thank you. That's all.
Oh, Sandra, this foursome would have been decidedly diminished if you hadn't been with us. So I'm glad you're here.
Well, I'm thankful for learning. I'm thankful for learning.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you all.
I can't wait for the 3-hour individual conversations that I can have with each of you on Instagram one day. It'll be very, and wear a mask and vote. Thank you all so much. Take care of yourselves, okay? Oh, and Brian's going to take it down.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.